Welcome back to the Business Spotlight. Today we're talking about, well, the future Attorney General's runoff, or I should say election with Senator Ken Paxton, who's running. And that's important to the business community because he is for lower taxes, pro-business. He's literally for you as a business owner in the Texas area. And it would mean a lot for the rest of the country if he was Attorney General, because Texas has a huge impact on the rest of the nation. Now, two things I want to get into on this one, okay, Ken, is the idea that it's really important that we have a Republican this time. I heard you talking about that recently. Why is that important? And the second thing we want to talk about after that are really about Obamacare and how it's affecting Texas.
Well, the Republican issue is huge because there's a balance of power right now, very close between Republicans and Democrats. Most of the large states are Democrat.
So you're talking nationally?
Nationally.
Okay. If
Texas goes Democrat, if it becomes a Democratic state, a reliably Democratic state, then the balance of power shifts to the Democratic Party, maybe for good. We don't know. But very likely, you would always have a Democratic president, and you would have a Democratic Congress. You'd have a one-party system. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, you don't want a one-party system because you want competition, you want accountability, and that's why it's so important that Texas remain a voice on the other side to bring accountability. Detroit is an example of a city that for the last 60 years has had a one-party rule. The Democrats have controlled that. The result is no accountability, bad policy, with nobody shining the light of day on what's going on. And that city went from being the fourth largest city in the United States, one of the most economically prosperous with the vehicles being produced there, one of the most prosperous cities in the country and the world, to bankruptcy. And we don't want that to happen to our country, and I think we have that possibility if we move to a one-party system, which I think is likely if Texas turns Democrat.
Now, isn't the Obama's engine, is the only way to describe it, trying to run you guys over in Texas?
That's correct. They have a group called Battleground Texas. They've moved resources into Texas. They're trying to register more Democrats. They understand this too. If they win Texas, they win the game, at least for the foreseeable.
In the game of risk.
Yes, they take over the world.
They take over the U.S.
Right, and so obviously we are going to do everything we can to stop that, but I don't think people are aware of how serious that game is and how much money is being spent by the Obama administration and people that are close to the Obama administration to make that happen.
But doesn't it come back to that statement earlier that this time more than probably any other, your vote counts?
Absolutely. We have every statewide position is up for grabs this time. We either have, it's totally open or there's lots of competition for it. And we have the opportunity to elect the right kind of Republicans who are willing to step up, lead, and take on these really difficult issues with the federal government. But just voting for a Republican, we're all Republicans running, and one of those Republicans is going to lead the state in whatever area it is, governor, lieutenant governor, or attorney general. But if we don't elect the right Republicans who have a history, a record of standing up, who have a conservative record, then we are going to be in trouble.
And that's really important when I look at your record, as far as you really have been somebody that is going after the bully and standing up to them in every area.
That's correct, and that's one of my arguments. In campaigns, typically you get a lot of rhetoric about what somebody's going to do. Everybody in a Republican primary runs as Ronald Reagan. The reality is they didn't necessarily govern as Ronald Reagan, and so all I tell people is don't listen to the rhetoric, look at the record. And that's one thing I can point to, having been in the legislature for 11 years, having one of the most conservative legislative records in the state, and secondly, being willing to stand up and fight even my own party when it comes to issues that I disagree with.
Now, what about this issue with, like, I know that it's on your website today, it may not be tomorrow, but the Obama threatens voter ID. What's the issue with voter ID?
Critical. We passed legislation, I think it was 2 years ago, that requires that when you vote, you show up with a photo ID so that they can identify you as that person. Prior to that, you could walk in with a utility bill, and it might not be you, it might be you. We were worried about voter fraud, and so all we want to do is identify our voters and make sure the right person is voting. So we passed a law that said you have to have photo ID. Well, the Obama administration challenged that. We ultimately, through the court process, have won the victory to be able to implement that voter ID for the first time this election. And now they're challenging us again. Obama and his AG, Eric Holder, have challenged it and are threatening to sue us again and try to strip that out of our ability to do as a state.
I don't get that, though. There's something real wrong with that issue, because all you guys are trying, what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing is we just want everybody's vote to really count.
That's correct.
And for it to be a real vote, not cooking the books.
That's all we're trying to do.
Okay.
We're not trying to help either party.
And that's being fought by somebody else.
Correct. It makes no sense, but unless you think there is some voter fraud going on, and that somebody gets an advantage from voter fraud. If they get an advantage, then you can see maybe why voter ID would be a bad idea. Otherwise, common sense tells you that voter ID makes sense.
Right. So I mean, you know, it's you got a picture, it's a real person, you've got a record of it, and I don't know. That just
it's mystifying unless there's something wrong.
Unless there's, I don't know. There's history that I look at in the world that let's just say they used to tell a lie frequently until everybody just believed it. But that's a different state, I think. This is the Business Spotlight. I'm here with Senator Ken Paxton, the future Attorney General for Texas. Pro-business, all about you. This is the Business Spotlight. We'll be right back.
You can become a published author. Discover a system that will lead you from idea to having your book on the bookshelves. Bob Baer pulls back the curtain at the More Power to Publish workshop. Watch and learn how to follow the step-by-step plan to turn your idea into a published book. Learn more at morepowertopublish.com.